Hi, guys. So I was just interviewed today by Dr. Kat Bodden, who is amazing. If you don't know her, her practice is called Sea Change Medicine, and she's in Portland, Oregon. But she was interviewing me today about what one health habit I would recommend someone do every day for the betterment of their health. And so she loved this tip so much that I want to share it with all of you. And I hope that it ends up helping you to regain your health and vitality and all that good stuff. Today, I'm going to teach you one of my favorite self-care practices, which is called, and actually, I just named it this. It didn't have a name before, but I'm going to call it the dump and rewire, which is all about releasing stress and emotional upset so that it does not build up and harm your health. And I'm going to talk just briefly about why letting it build up really does harm your health. So I should start by saying that it took me a really long time to come to the understanding of how important a practice like this is for everyone. And part of that is because historically I was the queen of emotional suppression, and really most of my family members are as well. Even to this day, I still catch myself occasionally trying to push things down or deny that I'm feeling upset or distract myself or just kind of push on or get on with it sort of thing. But the reality is, what I've come to realize from both my own personal experience and working with a ton of patients who also had chronic health issues is that that always backfires. So I'll talk a little bit about what kind of things tend to happen when we do that. For me and most of my clients, that can manifest in a lot of different ways, but I would say some of the common ways are being irritable, feeling distracted, right? Because you're all wrapped up with that stress or emotional upset. Socially withdrawing, that was definitely one of my prior tactics or outcomes of doing this. Engaging in addictive behaviors, a really common one. That could be everything from food or sex all the way up to something really destructive like a lot of alcohol or other heavy drugs. A lot of people that have this habit of emotional suppression end up having difficulty sleeping and blowing up in interactions with other people when it's really not warranted and doesn't really make sense. It's just like all that emotional tension just like blah, and just boils over like a volcano erupting. But most importantly, I think from my perspective, being a healthcare provider, is that physical symptoms and health issues tend to arise when we do this on a regular basis, when we suppress stress and emotion and we don't actually have a good way of releasing it. So common health issues that tend to come up from this is muscle tension, headaches, other types of pain, actually really common. So when we are emotionally in pain, oftentimes if we're not acknowledging that, it'll show up as physical pain in the body. Brain fog is a really common one. High blood pressure, digestive distress, increased inflammation, or also impaired ability to fight infections is really common, and so many other issues. Really, it can manifest in any part of the body because our stress and emotional responses impact the state of the autonomic nervous system, which then controls every major organ system in the body. So you may be having these physical symptoms thinking, oh, there's a physical cause. I just haven't found it yet. I'm just going to keep looking and researching and trying to find out what that is. And all along, it may have actually been because of your stress reactions and emotional reactions that you weren't dealing with. And that was definitely part of what was the case for me when I was struggling with a lot of chronic health issues. So the research data at this point shows that our emotional reactions affect us, whether we suppress them or express them. And so what we actually need to do in order for them to not negatively impact the state of our health in every major organ system is to release or transform that emotional reaction once we have acknowledged it. So how do we do that? That's a great question. And it took me a long time to figure that out as well, to find something that truly worked for myself and for my patients. But I did. And I would put all these techniques under the blanket term of neural retraining tools. So if you haven't heard me talk about that yet, I'm going to tell you what that means because I know most people out there still have never heard of that. So neural retraining techniques are techniques that actually rewire your brain in a directed way, meaning that we can teach your brain to produce the outcome that you want. And it's actually not that difficult. And that could be anything from feeling more gratitude in your daily life to not being triggered anymore when you fly on airplanes or when your boss says a certain thing to you or anything else. In regards to health, what we're typically doing is rewiring the brain around all common stress triggers for you so that your nervous system can stay more regulated more of the time and your health can improve. So in most situations where we're having a stress or emotional reaction, how we respond is how we have learned to respond. As an example, if you feel fear when you see a snake on the ground, at some point you learned to fear snakes. And now your subconscious is producing that fear response for you automatically. And we know this is learned because many people do not respond with fear to seeing a snake. We also know this, or I know this at this point, because I've been doing these neuroplasticity techniques with people for quite some time now. And I've helped many, many people totally resolve phobias like this, as well as many other stress programs that they may be running. So you can imagine that if you've learned to feel stressed or emotionally upset in many of the everyday contexts of your life, when you look at social media or you watch the news or when you are taking care of the kids or when you have a work deadline or whatever, then of course your nervous system is going to be dysregulated or imbalanced a lot of the time, and that will dramatically impact your health. There's a really good reason why 75 to 90% of all doctor's visits today are for stress-related ailments. It is an epidemic. So for everyone, whether their nervous system is consistently dysregulated or not, I think one of the best health habits to engage in often, if not daily, is to do a stress and emotion dump and rewire. So there are a lot of ways that you can start this process, but one of our favorite ways to start with the expression of what's going on inside you is to journal how you feel emotionally. And there are some key points about how to do this in a way that's really effective. The first tip is that you want to avoid doing too much storytelling, right? He did this, and then I said that, and then he got angry, and then I got angry. Right. And you also want to avoid journaling a lot about physical symptoms. So what is happening that's triggering your stress or emotional reaction is less important here than to identify how you feel emotionally about what is happening in your life. And if you've been a chronic emotional suppressor for a long time, that may take some practice to get really good at it. You may initially struggle to really put your finger on exactly how you feel, and that's okay. With practice, it definitely gets easier. So the other tip is we want to do this in an unfiltered way, which is how you might express it as a child who does not know what is socially acceptable or unacceptable to feel and express, right? So as an example, maybe you are resenting your partner right now because he or she is injured and unable to help out around the house, but that seems unreasonable to feel resentful towards him because he can't help it, right? These kinds of emotional reactions that we label as inappropriate or unacceptable are often the ones that dysregulate us the most because we're stuffing them down and denying that they exist. So this is actually the goal. This is the good stuff that we need to acknowledge and express and then release for our own health and well-being. So once we have our unfiltered rant out on paper and we know what we're struggling with, now we want to help ourselves release and or transform that emotion. So you can destroy the paper here or after the next step, doesn't matter, as long as you do eventually destroy it. So in our program, Wired for Wellness, we have a variety of types of guided processes that help people to do this. And not only to release the emotion, but actually to rewire the emotional association to that topic in the brain so that the emotional upset stops repeating itself every time you're in that situation. So going back to our example of the fear of snakes, we can actually teach the brain and relatively quickly and easily to stop fearing snakes. And so when you happen upon a snake, what will happen at that point after you've rewired is you will feel exactly what you taught the brain to feel, which I would suggest probably the best thing to teach the brain is to feel calm in that situation. And so that's what will naturally happen. You won't have to try for it. That's just what will naturally occur. So a lot of people have no idea that this is possible, but I think it is so exciting that we have the knowledge about how the brain works to be able to do this now and to be able to do it quickly. So yes, we can actually teach the brain with these techniques to respond to virtually any trigger that is not actually life-threatening. And we can teach it how to respond in a better way, and it's not difficult. So doing this rewiring work actually frees a person's nervous system to become calmer and more regulated on its own, because it's not constantly getting triggered by all these things that it has learned to feel stressed by or upset about. And therefore, you don't have to constantly put out emotional fires from getting triggered all the time, which I think is a big, big deal because we're all strapped for time these days. And I think it's so exciting to know that you can actually make these massive changes in your brain that lead to you having a better quality of life and more free time where you're not dealing with your own stress and emotional reactions all the freaking time. So I'm sure many of you out there have tried things like meditation and yoga and many other techniques that are designed to calm the nervous system and help you move through emotions. But in my experience, many of those other techniques really just work in the moment, right? You feel better for a while, but it's temporary. So when you use one of our brain rewiring processes, you will not only see your stress and emotional reaction improve in the moment, but also the next time you encounter or think about whatever triggered it. So over time, you end up needing to use these techniques less and less often. But I should say that that doesn't mean never, right? Because life will always throw new stressors our way. So I still use the stress and emotion dump and rewire at least once a week to make sure that I'm not letting stress and emotion build up and interfere with my health, because that is definitely a huge part of what got my health in trouble a long, long time ago. And it took me many years to stop chasing all of the physical contributors to my health issues and really realize how big a player this was. And before I started doing neural retraining and rewiring all of this stress programming in my brain, I benefited from doing this every day. Absolutely, because I was getting stressed and upset, triggered so often. But that has dramatically changed. And now I just do it typically once a week for maintenance. So let me give you an example to tie this all up of a client who really dramatically changed her stress response to a trigger in the moment, but also forever after that. So this client, we did a little free meet and greet, which I do with all my new clients. And I led her through a brief neural retraining process just so she could see what it was like. And it probably took less than 5 minutes. And she chose to do it on the panic attacks that she had been having every time she tried to go to Costco or another crowded place. So when we started working on this, I had her just imagine walking into Costco, and just from picturing that in her mind, she got really, really anxious, and she was feeling all those intense sensations in her body of the building panic. And then I did the neural retraining process with her. And within a few minutes, she could imagine walking in and shopping and feeling completely calm. That's what naturally happened as she played it out in her mind. So then I gave her homework to go to Costco and to reinforce while there to her brain that it was actually safe. And so she did a little exercise right before she went into Costco, and she was able to go in, shop, do the whole thing, and feel totally fine and calm the whole time. And every time she's been back to Costco since, same thing, no issue. So this is what's possible with techniques that not only help you calm down in the moment and release the emotion, but also rewire the brain. So let's recap the 3 main steps to remember, which are: 1, you got to start with a mode of self-expression. I think journaling is the best. Keeps you really present, really focused on what you're doing. And you want to remember to focus on the feelings more than the circumstances that brought on the feelings. You want to focus on doing it in an unfiltered way. No emotional reaction is unacceptable to feel or acknowledge. And 2, do a neural retraining process to help yourself release the current stress and upset and rewire the brain at the same time so that the reaction's less likely to repeat in the future. 3, you want to destroy that journal entry because it absolutely may not be helpful or appropriate to express those feelings to somebody else in your life, right? And so once you have released that emotional reaction or that stress reaction, the other reason you want to destroy this journal entry is because you don't want to stir it back up by rereading it. That is not a good thing to do for your health and well-being. So for your own good, you want to destroy it as well. Okay, I hope that this inspired you to take a deeper look at your stress and emotional management routine. And if you don't have one that's really working for you, or you're struggling with chronic health issues that may be related to stress or trauma or emotional reactions constantly happening in your life, then consider trying a different approach. And if you want to try the approach of neural retraining techniques in an environment where you get lots of support and guidance and community, join us in the Wired for Wellness program. The best part about trying out this program is that you can try it risk-free for 14 days. If you try it and you're like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not in love, you can get a refund. So you might as well give it a try and see if you like it, see if it works for you. And I feel very confident that it will. So looking forward to seeing you in there. And thanks for listening.